It's 4 o'clock, call to order. Roll call, we'll find 3 members here. Sartell and Dave Kleiss are not here.
Oh, Dave is online.
Oh, Dave's online?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Hi, here.
Hey Dave, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a different time here, so it's much warmer, but.
Yeah, right. All right. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
No.
All right, do we want to move to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Consent agenda items, item 5 through 8.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Oh.
I got it, aye, yep. Open forum, is there anyone here for open forum?
No.
No one? General business, presentation by Berg KDV of fiscal year 2024 preliminary audit.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Caroline Stutzman. I'm the partner involved in the audit for St. Cloud Metro Transit Commission. So I'd like to take a few minutes of your time this afternoon to go through the results of that audit. The main reason you ask us to work with you is to provide an opinion on your financial statement. So that opinion is housed within the independent auditor's report. So also within the independent auditor's report, both management's responsibility as well as our responsibilities outlined. And management's responsibility is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. Really what that means is management is calculating and determining the numbers. Then our job is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. So that's that opinion that I'm talking about. We're providing an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level that you can receive, not a change from previous years, meaning we believe those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects as of September 30th, 2024. One thing you'll note is we are waiting on the pension information. That's been a common discussion that we talk with you about just because of the timing of when that is released. So everything will be final here within the next few weeks, but those pieces aren't reflected in what we're talking about here. In addition to looking at the numbers, we also conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That requires us to consider internal controls as we go throughout that process. So one item related to internal controls is lack of segregation of accounting duties. It is just inherently present with the amount of duties that overlap, very, very common for entities of your size. And then an additional component, because you spent more than $750,000 worth of federal expenditures, an audit in accordance with uniform guidance was performed as well, otherwise known as the single audit. We tested the federal transit cluster. There were no findings in relation to that testing. And then one final component before we look at some of the numbers or financial analysis is in relation to Minnesota legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor compiles a number of state statutes and asks us to ask questions about that information. We did not have any findings in relation to any of that either. So with that, we'll dig into the financial analysis, and we begin here with the inventory balance, so showing where it's been over the 5 years presented here in the slight increase in 2024. Here we have operating revenues. So this is your government-wide revenues, and it excludes your federal and state capital revenue. So in total, operating revenues increased just under 9%. The largest fluctuation or increase happening in the state grants. That was offset by a decrease in federal sources, so a slight shift in the funding sources there from the federal to state, and an increase as well on the state side of things. And then other revenues increased with interest increasing as market conditions improved this last year. Here we have total revenues and expenses, so these revenue amounts do include those capital components. And so here we see an additional increase, and just to point out on top of the operating revenues that we already touched on, capital increased by $2.6 million, so seeing that additional increase in the lighter, or in the green bar there. And then on the expense side of things, an increase there, just under 4%, really had to do with increases in salaries and benefits as it relates to increased positions this year. Here we look at financial position, so the equity position, and then also a line for your cash position at the end of the year. Starting out at the top, total net position, again, this is your total equity position, increased just under 4.5 or 4.5 million. A component of that is tied up in your capital assets. It's the orange bar and net investment in capital assets. You can't use that portion for future operations because it is invested in your capital assets. That component increased about 800,000. We're going to skip the blue bar for a second. Then unassigned net position, we're also going to touch on assigned net position on the next chart, a little bit more detailed. But the unassigned is kind of all of that general, what's available for future operations without earmarks or tags associated with it, increased by 2.4 million. And we also have the blue bar. I'm going to just hop back to that, showing that cash position and where it's been over the 5 years and the increase in 2024. And here we have those assigned components, a little bit more detailed for where you have assigned funds for future planned costs that you are planning ahead for. The majority of that being with your capital or your fixed asset items. And here we have capital expenditures for the 5 years presented, showing an increase in 2024. It was a busier project year for you. You also had a purchase of land and some bus purchases. And the last couple of slides just look at your operating revenue and expenses in a pie chart format. So kind of reiterating a bit what we touched on earlier with the shift in funding between state and federal, so seeing those percentages shift just a bit from this perspective. And here we have the expenses, also sort of reiterating what we touched on earlier with that increase in the fixed route and dial ride transit operations. I'd be happy to take any questions anyone would have for me.
Anybody got any questions for her? Dave?
I was just curious, I know that they acquired the property in Wade Park to do a new transit center and so forth. Financially, are we in good status in terms of moving forward with the funding that you have currently to take on that project?
Yes.
Yes, we are. We're getting most of our funding from the FTA, so that has been approved and is in part of our CIP.
Okay, so that's all been taken into consideration?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else? This is a preliminary, you'll be back with a final?
The final, we'll make those tweaks and then we'll kind of send that on and they'll do all the signing. The numbers that I presented to you here shouldn't change,
Okay.
significantly from that standpoint, so.
So you need us to approve this tonight?
I believe that is,
Or do you want to wait for
Well, let's wait till we
final?
get the numbers.
Wait till
Typically,
final
we wait
numbers?
till
I'll
we
let
get the
them
final
know,
numbers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then once it's final, then we'll have the book.
Yeah.
And then we leave the book for the commission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Sounds good. All right.
all right?
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yep,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right, item 10, consideration of preliminary program of projects. You're up.
Good evening, Commissioners. In your packets this evening, you will find Metro Bus's program of projects. So this is part of our CIP for 25, which was brought to the board, I believe, sometime in September and approved. We just have it listed out a little bit because that will be going into the newspaper for approval, and it's going to be part of our triennial for the next 3 years.
Okay, anybody got any questions on that? And that's a preliminary too, so there's nothing to do with that, that's just information?
So this is final.
This is final.
Oh, it is final?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Because it says
once
preliminary.
it goes into the newspaper, so once you approve it and there's no comment back from the
Okay.
public, then we'll have the final approval, and that will not be coming back to the board. So
Okay.
the numbers are going to stay the same. It's just if we get any comment back, then we'll bring that back to the board. If not, the final is what we say.
All right.
Right. Typically, we don't get no comments
Yeah.
for the most part when we advertise in the paper.
Yeah.
But this is just one of the policies that we have to do.
All right.
Just following guidelines. Yeah.
So what, do you want to move to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Item 11, consideration of HR policy update, Chapter 9, leave of absence.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As you know, we are in the process of implementing a new HR and payroll software, which includes time and labor as well. With that change, we're looking at a slight revision to our sick and vacation accrual process. No change in the amount that employees will get on either side, but right now we receive, or employees receive their accruals monthly at the end of every month. Once we go live with UKG, they'll receive, non-union within this policy will receive those accruals per pay period based on hours worked. And only up to 80 hours in a pay period. So if somebody were to work more than 80 hours, they can only accrue so much per hour worked up to that 80 hours. Same will be true for sick. The time isn't changing, but the way it's accrued and put into people's banks will be on that per pay period basis. We also are updating our language as it applies to when employees go into an unpaid status. If an employee goes into an unpaid status, they will no longer accrue sick or vacation until they return back to work in a paid status. And then our part-time employees will receive the same hourly accrual amount based on their hours worked as well. Rather than basing it on budget, which is what we do right now. We base it on budgeted hours. However, sometimes people work a little more than those or a little less, so they'll accrue on actual hours worked. Any questions?
All right, any questions for Sunny? Dave?
I'm just curious, I mean, is that because the computer system allows that tabulation to take place? Somebody's not manually
No.
calculating that, putting it on each
No,
one? It's
right
just-
now, somebody's manually calculating things. Once we move to UKG, it'll all be calculated in the background of the system.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can move to approve that.
So,
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. I got it. He was just late on the other one. He's probably in tomorrow. No, seriously. I think he is.
You've already adjourned, Rick.
Sounds good to me. All right, item 12, consideration of 2025 pay equity report.
Every 3 years, we have to file a pay equity report with the state of Minnesota. This year is our year 3. The report has to be approved by the board, and then it'll be reviewed by the state for compliance.
Questions, commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. I was waiting for Dave for his voice to come from yesterday, or tomorrow, actually. All right.
I said aye early, so it would be ahead of time, so I think I was synchronous, or right on.
Thank you.
All right, item 13, training and safety update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Your Training and Safety Department here works to support all Metrobus employees during onboarding and as a resource throughout the year. 2024 was no exception. We onboarded 26 new and returning employees, including 22 operators, 2 maintenance personnel, an administrative specialist, and our director of finance. We continue to have an exemplary CDL exam rate with the state, with 100% of our operators that needed their CDL licenses to pass those successfully. We also, myself, have now obtained a third-party examiner certification, so I will become the third-party examiner. So, yeah, that was something that we desperately needed. So, we continue our annual trainings, our training activities in the spring for our dispatchers, operators, and maintenance personnel. Our managers and supervisors go through periodic trainings to bring them up to date on policies and leadership essentials. And we do our annual organizational training, our pods in the fall, and bring them up to date with stuff that's happening here with Metrobus, as well as bring in a outside facilitator to provide them with some insight on life and things that can help them with their everyday job responsibilities. And then, as Sonny mentioned, with the UKG stuff coming on board, we're helping with that too, training all the non-union personnel. From a safety perspective, you have an active safety committee that meets every other month. We do periodic walkthroughs with our industry partners from SFM to identify risks that might be on campus or around our properties and on our buses. And then we also manage and investigate our liability insurance claims that happen throughout the year. We were successful this year in meeting our safety performance targets for our agency safety plan, and there aren't any changes to that this year. So that will be 4 years of data that we have. We'll be doing 1 more year of data, and then next year we'll be analyzing that for potential changes in our performance targets. And then we are also actively involved both at the state level with RTAP, helping develop and support training that's beneficial to our employees. This year I participated in a legislative study on commercial driver workforce and trying to come up with some ideas to present to the legislature to help with getting more drivers for transit agencies. And then also on the national level, I was involved in a panel there as well on licensing public transportation vehicle operators. There'll be a 2-year study that's coming out that we awarded a contract to someone for that. So never a dull moment, always staying busy. Be happy to answer any questions if you have any questions. Or...
Chair, I have one.
Yep, go ahead.
It might be towards you and Sunny both. How are we doing for staffing? I mean, in all the different positions.
The last time I looked, I think we had 10 fixed route vacancies.
How many?
10.
10?
Yep, we are actively recruiting to fill 2 of them. The other 8 are kind of on hold until we get through implementing the long-range transit plan and figuring out where we're at as far as need. Dial-A-Ride, I believe, just ended up in 1 vacancy because we had a retirement. Otherwise, we had been fully staffed until the end of January.
Okay.
All right, yep.
Just a quick comment. I just want to commend the drivers for the Metrobus and the Dial-A-Ride. I work in a transition program with students who are 18 to 22 who are disabled, handicapped, and I'm really impressed with the patience and courtesy that they show the students when they're loading on the bus, the time it takes the young lady in the wheelchair to get strapped in and everything. I mean, they just do an excellent job. So I've ridden on a number of rides with them this school year, and just I continue to be impressed with the work that's being done. Okay, thanks.
Good. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Anything else, period?
Full stop.
All right, then we are adjourned at 4:18.